Hello there, my name is Ismas. Welcome to another Blender tutorial. So this is part 4 of our Blender training series, and this time we're going to be looking at creating some great effects like this chain dropping on this ball. So let's play back and see what we are going to do. You can see that effect there, and it can be interactive if you want to. You can see if I play with this, see we get that effect. So if you have ever tried to achieve an effect like this using rigid body modifiers, you will know that it's quite hard to get things to work the way you want to. Yeah, let's see how to get this to work easily in so my first attempt was to do this in Blender 2.8, but for some reason this version keeps on crashing as I do the test. I guess because it's still in beta version, and they're still working on a lot of bugs. So we're going to be working in Blender 2.7, Blender 2.79, but in spirit, just know that we are working in Blender 2.8, since everything that we're going to be doing here can still be done in this version. The steps are still going to be the same, and if there are any radical changes, I'll be updating the tutorial. Yeah, let's dive in and work on this cool effect. So I'll just get a new Blender project, delete the cube, we don't need that. So the way this works, so the concept behind this is that if you have say two meshes, let me get my orientation right. If we have two meshes, so let's say this is one plane, and we duplicate this and have a second plane like this. Let's give this a different material, just so that we can differentiate it from the top one. If we have two objects like this, we can bind them to each other, so that when we go to edit mode and make any edits to this mesh, they will be extrapolated to this mesh. And the way you do that is that you use a modifier called a surface deform. So if we select this mesh and go to surface deform, we apply that, we can select this as our target and bind these two. So if we bind them and move, are they bind? No, so this is bind to this, so we need to edit this. So whenever we edit this, the same will be done to this object, other object. Now if we add more resolution or subdivision to this, so at the time of binding so after you bind, you need to maintain the number of polygon count for both meshes as before you bind it. So when you change the resolution for one, then the binding will not work anymore, and you will be getting that error that you see here. So if you change the resolution of any of the planes, you need to unbind and then bind again. But that's not really that helpful, since there is not any resolution to match this the edits we are making here. So we need to subdivide this as well, then again unbind and then bind, and you see we have that. So if we turn on proportional editing, another thing to note, when you're binding, make sure the distance between one object to the other is very small, so otherwise you will get these kind of errors. You see the edits we're making here, they are the same here, but they are applied here, but the calculations are quite off. So let's unbind and bring this closer. The closer the meshes are, the more accurate the binding will be. So let's bind this, and now if we move this to the side and I edit this again, you see the edits are almost, I think they are exactly the same. So let's edit this, and to make this cool effect here, that we did. We binded this, let me unhide this, to this object here. So if I move this to the side, you can see that this is just a plane with a cloth modifier. So, and any changes to this are applied, are being transcoded or extrapolated to this chain mesh. So you see, and that's how we get that. So we can just, after binding these two, we can do anything we want to this. So we can add, let's say, the cloth modifier. Let's add an object to interact with our mesh. So we call this, we'll give this a collision modifier. And you see, you're getting that. So it's a cool cape. So any interactions this has, they'll be extrapolated to this here. So now, to make this cool chain, where is that? This cool chain here. Let me to make this cool chain here, we just need, have too many applications opened. God. We just, let's move these to a different, let's just go to a different layer and make this chain. So for that, we just need to add a torus. Let's reduce the number of segments. Let's say 6 by 6, maybe by 8. We don't need a lot of resolution, as it will slow down our calculations. And then maybe we can turn on smooth shading, and let's move this to the top like that. So the kind of pattern we want to go for. And if you want to reduce the size of this, you can also use Alt S to scale those faces along their normal to reduce the size of that plane. Let's turn off proportional editing. So we can rotate this 30 degrees in the Y direction, Shift D, Y, rotate this in the Y direction, negative 60 degrees, so that we have an X like that. So we need that to be around there. And then I'm forgetting the pattern here. Then we can Shift D, I think, Control A, mirror this in the Control, so we have a duplicate, mirror it in the X direction like this, and then move it I think to around there. Let's recalculate the normals, so we have that. I think we can also select this, Shift D, duplicate this to have it, Control A, mirror this in the X direction. Let's see, what direction is this supposed to go? Let's first select these, Shift D, mirror them in the X direction, can pull them here, Control N. And I think we can select this, Shift D, Y, and we have our chain link like that. And if you want to scale down the rings, you just use Alt S to reduce on the size of the rings. I think it's not the most perfect chain, but since it's going to be a cloth we're just going for aesthetics, and we don't really need to go for the most perfect thing. So let's turn on ambient occlusion and turn on meta cap, and let's turn on gold something, and then we can add an array here, array modifier. So let's see it around here. Then we can come here to this, rotate it a bit so that they're not intersecting. Something like that, and we can copy this in the Y direction. Again, we just need to rotate this a bit. So that they are not intersecting. Now we can make as many copies in the X direction, then in the Y direction, for just to get the size of our mesh. So let's bring this back and scale this down so that is the size of our cloth. So let's see which one was our cloth. This one here. Let's see if we can bind this without applying the array. So add surface something, whatever it's called. Let's move this down closer to the plane, to the control plane. Then bind it, select it as our binding object, and then bind. It works like cheese. Now we can hide these, and we would have our nice effect. Can also turn on subsurf, maybe also for this, but that is going to greatly slow down your simulation. Let's not do that. See, let's use a circle, UV circle. Give it a collision. Let's see what we have there. And that's how you make that effect. Maybe when you're creating yours, make sure that you have enough resolution for these rings. That's why they're looking like that. And if we try to add the subsurface modifier, maybe let's reduce the view to 1. It greatly slows down the calculations. So yeah, that's how you do that. And yeah, if you found this useful, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.